Hey everybody, welcome to episode 53 of The Green Life. Do you believe in miracles? I think after today's episode, you just might. Today's guest is Dr. Dawn Mussallem, and she has an amazing story. Dawn has been through very big health ordeals, from cancer to heart failure and transplant, and she did it all with this strong, amazing, positive spirit. And I cannot wait for you to really meet her and fall in love with her as I have, because she's inspirational. Okay, before we get into the episode though, we have to just give a big shout out to Namawell for the J2 juicer, because as you know, I love my machine and it has upgraded my juicing experience, and I want you to experience the same if you're looking for a new juicer. So if you go into the show notes, you can grab 10% off. Also, we are weeks away now from my retreat here in Portugal, and so if you still want to come, there are a couple of spots left and you can book with us if you go into the show notes. But remember, this is a beautiful, comprehensive holiday to get to know northern Portugal's nature, beautiful cities like Porto, have amazing food, get treated and pampered and really just spoiled, and have the best time of your life. So I really hope to see you there. Now, without further ado, let's go into this beautiful episode. Welcome, Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Good rising. Thank you for joining me on The Green Life. How are you?
Good morning, Chantal. Terrific. Thanks so much for inviting me. I'm really excited to spend this morning with you.
My pleasure. I absolutely loved your story and also love your energy. Now we follow each other on Instagram, so I see that you're doing so many wonderful things. And I have never in my life met anybody with such energy, like spirit, it's just unbelievable. So thank you for that.
Oh, I think I have to thank my parents. I really do. I just had such a beautiful childhood, and I just remember as a child being very happy. And, there is a genetic component of happiness. About 40% is genetic. And I think I have a dominant happy gene. I'm pretty sure of it. But I just feel so blessed to have been given the life I've had and to be able to have that strong resilience and just ability to really grasp on to some of those trials and tribulations and adversity and use them as a strength to challenge me to grow through those. So it's been a real blessing.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And I must say, you're the first US client or US guest that I see so early. What time is it where you are?
It's 6:30 a.m.
Okay, 6:30. You look beautiful. You have, people are watching this on YouTube, they can see you. You look like you've been up for hours. You have everything done. So tell me, what time do you get up in the morning?
Well, I set my alarm for 4:07 every morning. That's, for whatever reason, that just works for me. But I typically get up around 3:55, 3:57, because I'm super excited to start my day. Wow. But it's funny. Sunday we had a marathon here in Jacksonville, so that was super exciting event. It was so energizing. But I've been sleeping in a little bit the last 2 days, so I felt good. So if my body needs rest, I'll try to really encourage myself to go back to bed to get a few extra hours of sleep. But it's hard. I really like to spring up early and start my day. And I like to try to get to bed a little bit earlier. I think it's challenging. Sleep is one of the pillars of lifestyle medicine that is the hardest for me. It just is, because I have so much zest for life and I just want to keep on going, and I'm a high energy person. But we can't overlook the fact that we need that restorative aspect of our day. And so the sleep is so important. So I really, really try to have a nice wind down process and really embrace the importance of getting that 7 hours of sleep. But I'm not always successful with it. So I'll kind of wind down on social media when I find that I'm not getting that 7 hours, and I won't even look at it so I can get to bed and get good sleep and get those 7 hours. So
I hear you. I'm a morning person too. I love that early morning and the brightness of the morning. I really feel like I'm wasting my day if I get up late, even if it's 8 o'clock, because, I've been tired, I haven't slept well. I feel terrible. I feel like, no, I missed my 2 hours that I could have had to myself.
Chantal, I completely agree. I just love that time of stillness and quiet and peace. And it's a time that many people who wake up in the morning, they have a particular ritual. Like I do the same exact thing every morning, and I love coffee. So I cannot wait to have my first cup of coffee with soy milk. I get so excited about that. So I've already had 2 cups, so I'm done for the day. And now I'm on to my herbal tea. So
I love that.
Watch out! She's energized.
She's energized. All
I
right.
haven't had a chance to exercise yet, so I wasn't able to get rid of that energy. So I'm gonna share it all with you guys.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, if people don't know your story now, we talked about your happy gene and your resilience, and they don't know why this is actually important in the whole story. You have a very fascinating story, and one that I really found I was very touched by, because a lot of people that go through what you went through very easily get into that victim mentality, and so everything around them is negative, because we start not believing in ourselves anymore. That definitely kills mitochondria energy, because our emotions are so important for our body. And you just have such perseverance and such positivity, and I was in awe of your story and the way that you went through it. So can you just start from the beginning? Where did this journey start? And how did you find facing your health issues, studying to be a doctor on top of it? How did you face them? How did you go through them, finding that strength in your path?
Thank you for asking me that question. And it was so interesting, because as a young child, I was just tickled at the thought of longevity. And you've probably heard me say this before, but when people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say I wanted to be in a Smucker's jar. And so in the United States, on the Today Show, they would always celebrate the 100th year birthdays. And they would put these amazing, vital 100-year-olds on these Smucker's jars. And so when I was 4 and 5, I thought that was the coolest thing, to see someone who lives to be 100 and they're flourishing. And so that's why I would tell people I want to be in a Smucker's jar. My 4-year-old brain thought, oh my gosh, I want to live to be like that. So it's really interesting, right? So a few years, moved forward, I started to understand this concept. So I thought, okay, I'm going to tell people I want to live to be 100 and be a doctor. So health was fundamentally very important to me at a very young age. I took strong interest in elementary school. But it was super cool because my parents lived a very healthy lifestyle. So my mom always cooked whole foods. She ground her own wheat. We had gardens. We did have some animal products with chickens and whatnot, but we had those from a farmer that lived up the street from us. So we lived a very healthy lifestyle. We had a lot of faith. I was raised Roman Catholic, so we had belief in God. So we had that spiritual component that was very important in our family. And we just had a lot of love in our family and our extended family. So I really believe that when I started to experience some adversity in medical school, that I had such a solid foundation and loving support that there was no fear. And so, it was about 3 months into medical school that I started not feeling well. And this was the first time in my life that I had been unwell. Otherwise, honestly, I don't really remember ever taking an antibiotic or ever being sick. I was just a very healthy child. So I saw several doctors because I was having shortness of breath. And, after the 3rd visit to a doctor, they said it was in my head, which was crazy because I was very athletic. I would climb mountains regularly. I would run 14 miles a day, super athletic, young woman. And I just wasn't me. I couldn't even walk 10 feet. And to have a doctor say it's in your head, you start to really rethink things. You're like, am I having stress? What's going on? And then it was November 22nd, 2020, that I collapsed on my way home from medical school. I was taken to the emergency.
You mean 2000? 2000?
2000, thank you.
2020.
I hope you said that. It's 6:30 in the morning, my brain. Yeah. 2000, thank you. Thank you for paying attention to that. 2000, it doesn't seem like yesterday. It does seem like a long time ago, so I'm happy I said that. So in November 22nd, 2000, I had collapsed coming back from classes, and I was taken to the hospital, and there was a 15-centimeter mass wrapped around my heart, and I was diagnosed with stage 4 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it was a diffuse B-cell lymphoma, so it was growing very rapidly. And so, that was unbelievable. My dad flew in to be with me at this time. The doctor who was on call because it was Thanksgiving weekend, he was, not as warm and loving as a young woman and a family would hope to be. And so he didn't really fill my heart with hope, that's for sure. And he was kind of quite negative. And, they had even said that I only would have months to live if I didn't do aggressive treatment, and we needed to start the treatment immediately. And my heart was really struggling, so they had to do an urgent surgery, and we started chemo, and I started feeling better. So I did several months of high dose chemotherapy with something that's called CHOP chemotherapy. And because it was stage 4 cancer, they needed to do a bone marrow transplant. And, it was so interesting because I remember early on in the diagnosis, they had said I needed to quit medical school. I needed to get my affairs in order. I'm like, you're messing with the wrong girl, so that kind of like triggered this really intrinsic motivation to say, you're wrong. This is how we're going to do it. And I attained my vitality all through chemotherapy. I didn't like I didn't like feel sick at all. I just don't remember that. I remember my existence feeling so heightened. So if I would be taking a walk outside, or if I would be climbing the mountain, like that crisp breeze that would touch my skin, I would be so in tune with it. And a bird that no one else would see or hear, I would hear just this most beautiful sound.
Yeah.
And I just loved people. I was so connected with people. So it just raised me to this very heightened level of existence at 26 years old. It was a gift. It was like this gift and this teacher of life. It gives me chills to talk about it. It was so beautiful. So I went on to my bone marrow transplant, and back in this was in 2001. Back in 2001, it was very different how we did bone marrow transplants then. You were kind of, I've described it before, but the girl in the bubble, they drop your immune system down to 0 with very high dose chemotherapy and radiation. And so you're in the hospital for weeks, and you're supposed to be really sick. But again, I would look out to the other people, and you're in these isolated rooms, glass doors, and I would see how unwell they looked. And I just felt like I looked great. I look back at pictures now and I'm like, oh, I actually looked awful. But I didn't feel sick. I still felt very vital. My medical team was so supportive. They had a bicycle in my room so I could exercise in my room when there was other people out in the corridors when I couldn't be out. But every morning at 4 a.m., I woke up at 4 a.m. back then too, they had a bike in the main area that overlooked the mountains of Arizona. So I could see the sunrise. So I would go and I would ride the bike early in the morning outside in the corridor area. And it was a really good experience for me. I listened to very meditative music. I always brought colorful clothes with me to the hospital so I would not feel like a patient. I would feel, like myself. My medical school, my colleagues would visit me, bring me my homework. I would take my tests in the hospital. So I kept life normal. So normal that I even set that alarm at 4 a.m. to get up. And I think that was the trick. So went on to finish radiation therapy as an outpatient, and I was cured. It was incredible. And so a few years went by, and it was 2002. And again, I started not to feel as well. And they had thought that perhaps the cancer came back, and I did too. And they were doing a bunch of tests. I was nauseated. I was losing weight. So there was concern maybe it even went to the brain. Turns out I'm pregnant. It was a total miracle.
Hold on, when did you get married in this? Okay,
Yeah,
where did you meet your husband? When did you get married?
Yeah, so I actually met my husband before I was diagnosed with cancer. And it's kind of an interesting story. His name was Charles. So he was older than me. And so I was dating other men at the time and Charles, and then I get diagnosed with cancer, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't. I'm just going to have friends, right? But it was so fascinating how people come into our lives when they come into our lives. Because he came into my life at a time that I really needed that substantial wisdom, and he really stayed by my side, and he was there with me when I was diagnosed. He came in to visit me because he had actually lived in Florida and I was in Arizona. So he came in to visit me, and he stayed in close contact with me, and we continued to grow our relationship during that time of the chemotherapy. But I had other very important special friends, and I just dated during that time. I just wanted to have fun. I didn't want to have any constraints on what I should or shouldn't do. So we continued to grow our friendship, and we got engaged shortly after I had my bone marrow transplant. And then we were given this gift of being able to grow our family. And it was the most amazing thing that we didn't think we would ever be able to have.
Yeah, so good point there, because a lot of people that have chemotherapy are told that they might not be able to have children, most likely, because obviously, and that just kills everything. So that is definitely a miracle. But I'm not surprised that of all people that actually this happened to be you, because you took care of your body so much that, it's just now come of how you supported your body through it. But I do have a question about the therapy that you were doing. So you went to medical school, you became an osteopath, but you wanted to study naturopathy. Now, from my studies and my experience, obviously we look at allopathic medicine and naturopathic medicine in very different ways. I do personally agree that in some cases, modern medicine, allopathic medicine, is life-saving, which obviously you're a testament to. But you will find a lot of people that, a lot of doctors that have, they are more on the naturopathic side, don't like chemotherapy, because obviously it doesn't only kill the cancer cells, it actually damages all the cells in the body. So if you're not starting from a point like you were, where you're healthy and looking after yourself, that can cause more damage than anything after, because your body's just unable to pick up, and that happens a lot. What was your view coming from wanting to be more holistic in your approach to then, realizing that actually I need to do this because it is actually a life-saving choice? Was there any conversation in your head about that, or any thoughts?
It's so interesting the paths that our lives take, because when I was in undergraduate studies, I went to Ohio State University. I studied exercise physiology and nutrition. And after that, again, I loved exercise. I love centenarians or people who are 100. So I went on to do research at the Cooper Institute for Aerobics Research in Dallas, Texas, with Dr. Ken Cooper and Dr. Stephen Blair. And my research there was on centenarians, people who were 100 who were still running marathons. And I did that for a few years, as well as biomechanics, how to maintain muscle mass in extreme situations like anti-gravitational environments. So I love this stuff. But I worked with a lot of doctors there, and they introduced me to the concept of naturopathy. Otherwise, I had never heard of it.
Okay.
So after my studies, or during my studies at the Cooper Institute, this is when I was really starting to say, okay, it's ready for me to go to medical school. What kind of medical school am I going to go to? So I actually went to naturopathic school first.
Okay.
It was amazing. So I went to naturopathic school in Arizona called the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. And during that time, I realized that perhaps it was going to be a little challenging. This was back, in 1996, 1997. So, that was many years before naturopathy was quite as accepted as it is now. And so you were very limited where you could practice. And so I started to get a little nervous. Like, what if I end up going through this 4 years of education, because it's 4 years of training, just like traditional medical school. And what if I'm limited to only practicing in these few states?
Yeah.
And so I got a little concerned. So I transitioned my training from naturopathic school to osteopathic school, which was a perfect fit for me. Because the osteopathic school that was in Arizona was extremely holistic in nature. Arizona, just by nature, is a pretty holistic, viewpoint for many, many people. And there's that desire in the patients that are seek that out. So the doctors and the medical establishments really, I feel, uphold a little bit more of a holistic way of practice, at least back then. I think now it's kind of equalized throughout the country. But I went to osteopathic school, and it was just a wonderful experience, but so great that I had that naturopathic background. I met a really amazing doctor when in naturopathic school. His name was Dr. Dan Rubin. In fact, I was emailing with Dr. Dan Rubin yesterday, and he is basically the founder of the naturopathic oncology board certification. So there is a whole group of naturopathic oncologists out there that have some allopathic training so that they really know how to kind of integrate their therapy. So it's not quite alternative in nature, it's a little more integrative. When I think of alternative medicine, I think of people who say no to chemotherapy and they only want to do alternative routes. And I'm certainly not here to judge, but that does make me a little bit concerned, because I think when we can blend both things together is when maybe that's the best way to approach cure, and that's the best way to harmonize, cancer, period. But I meet this incredible doctor, Dr. Dan Rubin, during my training in naturopathic school. And then I get diagnosed with my own cancer. So guess who I call? Immediately? Dr. Dan Rubin. And so it was really amazing. And I really applaud the doctors at Good Samaritan Hospital in Arizona, as well as City of Hope, who did my bone marrow transplant, because when I shared with them that I really wanted to integrate Dr. Dan Rubin's approach to care, they said, no problem. They didn't ask any questions because they knew that he had had adequate training to make sure that he would not give me anything that would harm me, only things that would help to support my body. So it gives me chills to say that, because in my email I sent to Dr. Rubin yesterday, I sent him a picture from the marathon this week, and I said, I am alive, I am pretty sure, because of you.
Oh.
And he's like, wow. I mean, that probably feels pretty good for him. I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm alive. I was able to bring another life onto earth because of that, and I've been able to help so many people because I'm alive as a physician. But Dr. Rubin was so special. I mean, he would do labs for me, and I remember call me on my cell phone himself, and I was like, call me at 9 o'clock at night with lab results. He does that for all his patients. And I'm thinking, what doctor does this, So he even taught me to be the best doctor I could possibly be. So much good came out of that particular physician. So you're right. I think that there's such a need for integrative management of cancer patients because these chemotherapies are toxic. And unfortunately, I did experience one of those major toxicities that we'll talk about. And I don't think there was any way around it. My cancer was so aggressive.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people step back and say, well, wait a minute, Dawn, why did you get cancer? Here you said you lived this healthy lifestyle and you get stage 4 cancer. And I don't know. I don't have that answer. As a child, I was kind of a tomboy, maybe a little bit of tomboy. So I'd play in this creek behind my house that was a runoff from a field. And so maybe I spent some time in some pesticide or herbicide filled waterways. It's very likely. And I would spend hours, we're talking like 6 to 8 hours every Saturday and Sunday in that water hunting for crawdads and stuff for years. I love that stuff. So it's possible I had some toxic exposure that my body, just couldn't counteract. And then you enter medical school and it's a time of stress. You're not sleeping as well. I wasn't probably eating as well as I needed to at that time, though I was still eating pretty healthy, but my body was taking one insult after another. And I have patients come to me all the time, and some of these patients are very healthy like I was. And they say, how did this happen? I was doing everything right. And I don't know that we always know, but I think when it comes to cancer, it's kind of like a baseball game, right? It's kind of like 3 strikes and you're out. And if you have a little bit of a genetic component, you have a little environmental component, and then maybe you just have, a lifestyle related aspect that maybe wasn't as optimized as possible, maybe the cancer occurs. Yeah. Or maybe it's just supposed to happen. Maybe it was just in our deck of cards. And for me, cancer was the best thing that happened to me. I would never trade it in. It was such a time of growth. And to acknowledge the possible, the fact that when in Western medicine, we say someone only has X amount of time to live, or maybe there could be a bad outcome, and just to prove them wrong because you really took care of yourself is such a victory and such a triumph. So it was amazing. And so I really encourage my patients to try to work through that question they have in their mind. Why did this happen to me? And to reframe it and pivot it so that you can try to accept it in a way that it's going to guide you towards transformative change, meaning and purpose in your life.
I love that.
And so that's very, very important. But if a patient doesn't accept that diagnosis and they remain turbulent around it, that is going to really interfere with good treatment outcomes, I feel.
Yeah.
And same thing when I have patients coming in to see me and they hate the thought of doing chemo and they don't want to do chemo. And I see the oncology team kind of fighting with them because they have to do chemo. It's kind of like, all right, time out. What do you want to do? What is your heart telling you to do? It should not be a doctor's ego in the room to feel like they're defeated because they can't convince a patient to do chemo. It's our job as physicians to educate and inform patients about the benefit of traditional chemotherapy. But if for some reason that's not resonating right with the patient, it's not a failure of the medical system that we didn't change that person's mind. It's just that patient's wish, and we should respect that. But I really hope to inspire patients by my story to let them understand that, yes, there is some toxicities with the treatment, but in an effort to cure disease, I really feel that blending that Western medicine with alternative and integrative approaches that are safe with low possibilities of harm is the best way to go. And so that's why I love what I do. I love my job so much. I could work all day long. if I didn't have to sleep for my own health, I wouldn't. You know? But it's so critical to really look at that whole person wellness. It really, really is.
Yeah, nice. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And we're going to talk about your work at the end. I want to carry on with the story. So you met Charles before your diagnosis, and then throughout your healing from cancer, you got married. And now you are 2 years in after healing, and you're pregnant.
Yes.
Okay, let's carry on from there.
So it was so amazing to have another human growing in your body after going through this time of cancer treatment. It was just like you were fully alive. And I was still in medical school, so it's like my life was perfect. And I remember, when it was time to deliver her, how difficult it was, though. And I thought, oh my gosh, I respect women so much. Women don't complain about how hard this childbirth thing is, but it is hard. And so a few weeks after I delivered Sophia, it made a little bit of sense to me why that childbirth felt so difficult. I started to get very short of breath, and I felt just like I did when I was diagnosed with cancer. And I started to feel like I was going to collapse again. So I was taken to the emergency room, and I was in cardiogenic shock. And I mean, leading up to this, it got so bad that I couldn't bathe her. I couldn't hold her. So my mom was just pivotal with really helping care for my daughter. And so when I got to the emergency room, my heart just was not pumping properly. And they were worried that the cancer was back because there was so much fluid in the left side of my lung. Yeah. They did an ultrasound of the heart, and it was only beating at 8%. So I was diagnosed with advanced heart failure secondary to the chemotherapy and radiation. Or it even could have been from the childbirth, because there is a peripartum, cardiomyopathy syndrome. It could have been kind of a blend of everything. Most women aren't able to get pregnant after that significant form of cancer therapy, and I got pregnant quite quickly. Mm-hmm. I didn't think I could get pregnant because the doctor said it wasn't going to ever be possible. He said, you won't be able to have kids. And then here it happens. And so there's been other reports of women like me who got pregnant over that period of time, very close to their life-saving cancer treatment, who also ended up with some of this cardiac strain. So it's something of great research efforts. And that's why I feel it's so important for young people, especially when they undergo cancer treatment, to be part of an academic medical center so that they can really help to optimize your care and follow you so that we learn. That's the only way we'll ever learn. And so I am part of a study, and it's been very interesting that they do think there may be some shared genetic potential between cardiac failure secondary to chemotherapy agents as well as peripartum cardiomyopathy. Mm-hmm. So maybe in the future we'll find out that we need to instruct women, wait, no childbearing for 5 years or 10 years or whatever that magic number may be after cancer treatment. We need to let your heart recover. Yeah. But back then we really weren't quite as in tuned to the impact that cancer treatment has on the heart. And now there's a whole section of cardiology research and of practitioners at Mayo Clinic. We have a cardio-oncology department. We have doctors that see patients who have had cancer treatment just to optimize their heart health. So it's really wonderful. Mm-hmm. So I get diagnosed with advanced heart failure, and the doctors at this particular hospital where I went to the emergency room, and this was in 2003, had said that I was going to need an urgent transplant. And so I was getting ready to start my training at Mayo Clinic in Florida. So I got a second opinion there. And I remember Dr. Dan Yip. I mean, he just filled my heart with such love and hope and knowing that everything was going to be okay. And he's like, Dawn, we don't have to think about transplant yet. We're going to help your heart with medications. When you need procedures, we'll do procedures. And if you need a transplant in the future, hey, we have that. But let's not jump to that rate yet. So I started cardiac rehab. I absolutely loved cardiac rehab because I got to start exercising again. They started these medications, and my heart slowly improved some, up to like the 16-17% range, which was enough. My body was so well, taken care of over those years that I was able to be functional with an 18% ejection fraction. I couldn't run, I couldn't exercise in the way that I used to enjoy, but that was okay. I could hold my baby again, I could bathe her, I could go back to my residency training. So life was back on again. I felt pretty good. Mm. So everything was pretty good until around 2007. And I started to have a decline. So I had to take some time off of my training. They did an investigational device in my chest called a biventricular pacer. And so you won't believe what happened. So then in 2008, both Charles and I woke up early. It was just something we did. My daughter woke up early. We were like this family, 4 a.m. We were, and the whole lights were on. We were smiling, happy life. And it was getting late. And it was, like 8 o'clock in the morning, and he still wasn't up yet. And I just thought that seemed so peculiar. And I remember feeling like this sick feeling in my stomach, like this knowing that something's not right. And so I went into the bedroom, and he had died in his sleep.
Oh.
And on this particular night, before he went to bed, he said, "You know what, honey, go be with the baby tonight." So, I think back, and I just wonder, maybe he wasn't feeling well and he didn't want to tell me. I don't know, and all I know is when I walked in, it was just like, I shared with you early on that I have this happy gene and nothing like pulls me down. Well, how I would describe it is I walked in and I knew I wasn't going to be able to resuscitate him. And I felt like my vital existence just free fell. It was like at the bottom, ground level. And it didn't go below that. Like I never got depressed, but I was flat. Like I couldn't elevate myself for like a full year. I remember anything with stimulation was just like too much for me to handle. If I was in the car, I couldn't listen to music. Like it was just too much. I just had to be. And it was a time in my life, I had been raised in a Catholic family. We had strong belief in God, but I never really had to put it to the test. Even during cancer, it's like, it's easy when you're the patient. You can kind of take care of things yourself, but this was like external to me. I didn't know how to help myself during this time, but I would just look in Sophia's eyes and knew I had to be strong for her.
How old was Sophia?
She was 5.
Okay. And how old were you?
I was 34.
34. And Charles?
He was 54.
So he was 20 years older.
Yeah,
Okay.
he was older than me.
And did he have, what happened? How did you find out how he passed?
It was sudden cardiac death, actually. He had had a strong family history of coronary artery disease. He had had some little subtle red flags, but, it was interesting. All the attention was on me because we thought I was going to be the one to die, not him. So we didn't really focus on that too much. And it was just so challenging. And it really drew me closer to my faith in a way that I really contemplated the meaning of life and life after our time here on earth and just embracing that thought of heaven. And so for me, that was my grace, was that thought of heaven and knowing that my husband was okay. And, did very special things with Sophia during that time. And she actually did very well during that time. Children are so resilient. It was much harder on me than knowing that she wasn't going to have a father. And I think it's interesting. I think it's harder on her now that she lost her dad. Now, as she was a teenager in high school, it became hard on her. In college, it's hard on her because she is sad that she missed out on that part of, I think, the upbringing, the wisdom that her dad would have shared. He was an amazing man, just a gift to humanity. He loved people. And so that's my saddest thing selfishly is that I wasn't able myself to have him on earth long enough with me to kind of grow with him and continue to learn from him, because that's why I fell in love with him, especially after going through that cancer treatment. I had a hard time connecting with young men because I had gone through so much. And I had such this zest and this love for life and wanting to just understand the meaning of life further and beyond what.
Yeah, and you want to talk about deep things and then want to play beer pong.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I just couldn't do it. I was like, it's not working for me. So people a lot of times would judge, like, oh, why is she with this older man? I'm like, I don't know. I love him. Like he loves me. He adored me. Like, and I adored him. And I love that word adore. And in fact, soon after he died, there was a nun that had come into town to do this talk. Her name was Sister Briege McKenna. And after I heard her talk was when I started to transform and really to start growing and to work through this. And I did. And I got much stronger. And, after some time, it took me about a year, though, I felt like I regained my vitality and my authentic happiness and joy. And life is back. There's always moments when you are sad. And I think when you're sad, you're just reflecting on your own loss of that person you love. But you never lose sight of those special moments. You still embrace them for the rest of your time here on earth. So it's a very difficult time. So, I guess fast forward, and I went back to work over time. My heart actually did get stronger, which was very, very interesting. So they believed that biventricular pacer that they had put in 2007 finally started to kind of work. So in 2009, my heart function actually improved to 30% and then even 40%. Oh, okay. Great. So I went on, finished my residency, even did a fellowship in hospital medicine, became a hospitalist. Like I went into hardcore hospital work, did great, loved being a hospitalist, loved that adrenaline and that investment into helping people in the hospital. And I was pretty good at it because I was patient for so long. Yeah. I could kind of really grasp onto it. So enjoyed that. And then in 2015, things started not to go really well again. I started to get very dizzy when I would drive and have some near passing out episodes with any exertion. And then in 2015, 2016 is when at Mayo Clinic, they had said, hey, Dawn, would you consider coming in and kind of redesigning the breast center where we do high risk, breast cancer assessments and we do cancer survivorship? Would you like to kind of restructure that program? I said, oh my gosh, this timing is perfect because it was so hard to be in hospital medicine, being on call, working those long hours, and this would be more of a traditional 8 to 5 kind of job. So I took that opportunity. And as part of that opportunity, I piloted the integrative medicine and health program at Mayo Clinic. So it was amazing. It was just like, God looks out for me. He gives me this perfect opportunity at the perfect time when I knew I wasn't going to be able to sustain that hospital practice much longer. So I went forward with that. I partnered with one of our administrators, Michelle Leake at Mayo Clinic, who's just an amazing woman. And we designed this integrative medicine and health program specific for breast cancer patients. And it was built on a foundation of lifestyle medicine. So it was amazing. So I would do the lifestyle medicine consultations for the patients. I had an acupuncturist that was in the same hallway as the oncologist, is a radiation oncologist, is the cancer surgeon. So it was so wonderful for patients to be able to come in the same place where they would talk to their oncologist about chemo, is where they could talk to me about whole person wellness. They could get acupuncture. We had a massage therapist that was there, and we had a mind-body therapist that was there. So it is really whole person healing. So it was just wonderful. In 2016, it was September of 2016, I was given the opportunity to present the success of this program to the leadership team at Mayo Clinic. And I remember I had a really busy clinic morning and I was in a hurry, right? So I'm like rushing down the steps to go to this very important meeting that I had worked so hard to have success in this program, to try to grow the program for the entire institution. Why should we just keep it in the breast clinic? Let's give this to everyone. This is a great program. And as I'm walking down the stairs, Chantal, I feel my legs and they're so weak. And I was like, oh, what is going on? Like, this is weird. And you start thinking of things. I'm like, did I eat breakfast? Yeah. Did you sleep last night? Yeah. Did you drink too much coffee? No. And I got to the bottom and I'm like, they are so weak. What is going on? But I knew I had to rush. So I hurried to the boardroom. And I remember before I opened that heavy door, I just paused. I remember shutting my eyes and saying a prayer, just reflecting in gratitude and appreciation to have this moment, kind of trying to bring like my like heart center to this place of stillness, just to kind of settle in a little bit. But I just felt so off. And they invited me in to go ahead and take my seat. It was at the head of this long table. And then in the distant vision, like far in front of me, was the screen. And so I remember I had to hold the mouse and try to see the cursor on this distant screen. And it was like just holding the mouse with so much effort. And I couldn't coordinate my motion of the mouse with the cursor on the screen. And as seconds went by, that mouse the cursor got more and more faded. And the people around me in the room got more faded. And my last conscious memory was the woman sitting next to me was her red nail polish. And I remember it was a little bit chipped. Like, it was so weird. And I remember thinking, and that was it. And the next thing that happened was one of two of the most amazing experiences of my life. And so I get chills all the time. I am just like this goosebump person. I love that because it's like these aha moments. I think they're so good for our immune system. It's like, oh, this was such a beautiful experience. So I remember being in this place of darkness. It was very dark. It was still, and the temperature was cool. And I remember there was a slight breeze. And I remember this feeling of almost like a piece of hair being in my lipstick. So I had this sensory awareness during this experience. I felt as if my body was like suspended. And to this day, I'll get there. But I felt like my body was suspended. And it was like as if God, it was like there was this divine presence, but it was as if God was holding me. And I remember having like this total acceptance. I felt totally safe of this place of complete unknowing, which is totally unlike me. Because I love to be in control and I love to know everything. I don't like surprises. I want to know now. But not then, not in that moment. It just felt so safe. And I was in no hurry to go anywhere. There was no white lights, but I was just so comfortable. And I guess I was in that space for about 4 minutes is what the time had shown. And then what happened next was this huge like rush of energy started to come through my body. Like I remember this feeling of warmth that just came through my body. And then it was like this thump, like this big thump that kind of bounced me up onto my butt basically. And that was my defibrillator. So I had a cardiac arrest from what's called fine ventricular fibrillation. So it actually was like a flat line. Like the defibrillator wasn't able to successfully shock my rhythm because it was so flat and there was no bumps in that sequence for the defibrillator to grab onto. So I was down for about 4 minutes. And so it's truly a miracle. My electrophysiologist at that time was in Mayo Clinic Rochester, Dr. Samuel Ajurvatham, who is one of the most amazing men, an incredible doctor. I've been blessed with so many good doctors who have taught me to be a better doctor, but what a gift to humanity this particular gentleman was. And, he said to me, he's not really quite sure that my defibrillator is really why I came out of this rhythm. He said he thinks it may just have happened. So it may have just truly been a miracle. But
I think so.
What was really a miracle was that experience. And that experience really taught me never to fear death. Because I think that was more or less a near-death experience, whatever it was. It was a time of awakening and a time that my life really took this pivotal turn because what happened was after cancer, I kind of forgot. I forgot what that vital existence felt like. I was young, and then Charles died. So I just kind of forgot what the essence of life was. I still embraced life, but it was just a little different. And, with heart failure, you're so sick. You don't look sick on the outside, but you're so sick on the inside and you're so weak. And so you're just drained. But this kind of taught me to really tune in to life and every single morsel that life offers you. I think I just being young, I just didn't know the preciousness of embracing that existence that I had learned, that teacher of life that cancer was. So after this near-death experience, it kind of taught me to really pay attention to that deeply. And so then in December of 2019, I was listed for heart transplant. And, I remember when they had listed me, they had felt that I would get called immediately. So I was still at home at this point. I wasn't admitted to the hospital. We tried to have me admitted, we tried to keep me listed so I could still stay at home and be comfortable. And then I just continued to get more and more unwell. And would you believe I was actually on the list for over a year?
Wow.
And not one single call.
How did that feel?
It was so scary, because all of a sudden you're getting more and more sick. And all along we had kind of thought, oh, well, when she's listed for transplant, she'll probably get called pretty quick because she's small. There's not a lot of small people in the United States. I'm 5'2", I'm very petite. And so they didn't think it'd be challenging, but there was just no match for me. And so a year goes by and I'm getting more and more unwell. And this was during COVID now. So things are getting more sticky in terms of who are we going to transplant, who are we not going to transplant? Is it even safe to transplant and lower someone's immune system? And then, around November of 2019, November of 2020, I get COVID. And so my family's like, we all thought I was going to die, because that's when COVID, there was no treatment, there was no vaccine. You just assume you get COVID, you die. That's just what happens, especially when you have advanced heart failure, you're on a transplant list. But we know that people who are on whole food, plant-based nutrition and live healthy lifestyles, that they seem to have less severe COVID symptoms. Mm-hmm. And so I really instilled 100% naturopathic philosophy to my COVID syndrome. So I fasted for many days. As long as I was febrile, I did not eat any food. I just consumed, I guess I was having a little bit of vegetable broth during that time just to give me some, a little bit of electrolytes. But otherwise, I just fasted and I rested. And Mayo Clinic had this really amazing program where it was like care at home, where I had a home care nurse that would Zoom in with me 4 times a day. Mm-hmm. They made you a scale, they made you a blood pressure cuff, pulse oximetry, they'd have you do all of your vitals remotely. And so I had this very close care, and it worked out great. So I beat COVID, but that pushed me down even further. So come January of 2021, they had to admit me to the hospital because I needed supportive care for my heart failure at that point. I had just gotten too sick. And so I had to wait a few weeks in the hospital, still no call. And then it was February 4th that my daughter came to visit me in the hospital. We had dinner together. I walked her to the elevator because she was in high school, so she was on her way home. She couldn't stay in the hospital because of COVID rules at that time. And I saw my cardiologist standing at the nursing station. I thought, oh, someone's getting their heart. That is so incredible. And I remember thinking, I wonder what that's going to feel like. And he turns around, he's like, oh, Dawn, I need to speak to you a moment.
You just knew.
I don't know. It was so weird feeling. It was so awkward. And this was Dr. Parag Patel. And again, these amazing doctors that I've had over this journey of my various health issues. It's just been so remarkable. And I remember him and I were walking down this corridor in the hospital to my hospital room that was like the end of the corridor. And it was the most awkward walking. I didn't know if I should hold my arms like this, put my arms on my hips, talk, not talk. So neither of us talked. It was just like the awkward walk down the corridor. So we get into the room, he sits down, I sit down, and he's like, Dawn, I knew what he was going to say next. We have a match. And then all of a sudden, what you would expect would just be this joy. Like, you're like, yes, finally. You just step back, and you don't know how to respond. Because you know that within a day or two, or whenever the surgery is going to happen, that every memory that your heart, that your own heart that you were born with once held was going to be removed. It's so hard to and then for me it was even like, here I have memories of my husband and my daughter, and it's going to be removed, and I'm going to get a stranger's heart, and someone has to die for me to get this heart. And so it was just such a delicate process of trying to think through that. And it's nothing you can think through until they actually tell you. You would think you'd be prepared, but it's different until they actually tell you. And then the next thing he shared with me is, I have one more thing to let you know. Your heart donor is an IV drug user, and she has hepatitis C. And I'm like, oh, no. I'm thinking, how is this possible? I'm like, God, give me a break. I'm like, don't do this to me. I'm not strong enough for this right now. And I struggled with that. And the reason I struggled with that is during that time that I was being listed for transplant, I had a colleague, a good friend of mine who's a psychiatrist, and they came to visit me, and they're like, Dawn, do you really even want a transplant? I'm like, I don't want a transplant, but I need a transplant. And the next thing out of their mouth was, aren't you worried about your personality changing? And I was like, oh, I never thought of that. And he's like, because that happens. And I'm thinking, oh. So that's why I'm thinking, okay, IV drug user, personality changes. Do I want to take this on? And so I just had to think about it. I just had to process it, And then it was a very short period of time that I just had this feeling of knowing that, this feels right. This is right for me. And all of a sudden it was like, I rallied and I was like, this is great. It's going to be okay. And so The next day was February 5th. That's when I was scheduled to have my transplant, because they have to prepare so many things. There's so much that goes into this whole process. Once they know you're getting the heart, it's like this whole battery of tests you have to go through. And this was in the middle of the night that I had to go through these tests. So it was pretty exhilarating. It was pretty darn exciting. Then you're excited. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get my life back. Like, I am moments away from getting my life back. Right now, my life is dependent on these IV medications that are pumping my heart to live. And soon, I'm going to be on my way to living again. So it was fabulous. So they get me that morning. They take me down to the operating room. The team is just so amazing. I remember my mom had this rosary made for me, and I had that in my hand, and they let me keep that in my hand during the time of the anesthesia induction. I remember seeing my surgeon, who was a dear friend of mine, and we just had eye contact. And I remember that I had no fear.
You trusted him.
I trusted him, and I knew everything was going to be okay. It was the first surgery in my life that I didn't have fear. And I was just talking to a woman the other day, and she was very scared about what surgery was going to be like and about going under anesthesia. I said, gosh, I'd had so many moments like that until I had had my heart transplant. And it was the only time I had this complete acceptance and knowing that everything was going to be okay. And rather than previous surgeries, me shutting my eyes before anesthesia and just praying, God, please let me wake up in this turbulent manner. This time I remember just shutting my eyes and just giving gratitude, like just such heartfelt gratefulness to my donor and my donor family. And I knew that this heart was right for me. And for me, it was like, gosh, I mean, this is an opportunity. I don't know what her heart went through in her life, but I know I've been given a beautiful life, and I know I love life. So I'm going to just give her so much love and introduce her to this beautiful life. Maybe she did drugs because her life wasn't beautiful. Maybe she was numbing something that was very disharmonious in her life. So for me, it was this opportunity to just really nurture something, this gift that I was about to be given. And what a beautiful person to check that box to even be an organ donor, you know? Mm-hmm. And we know that in the United States, over 95% of people believe in organ donation. Everyone believes it. I mean, people think, oh yeah, it's a great thing. We should help a life. But only about 58% of people actually check the box and sign up to be organ donors. So it's important that people actually take time to register and share with their family that they want to be an organ donor, because, you know, if you die, why do you want to take your organs into the ground, or why do you want to cremate your organs? Don't do that. If you die and your organs are viable and you're able to donate those organs to someone else, I mean, there's nothing more significant than transforming the finality of death into life, vital existence, meaning, and purpose. Mm-hmm. You know, every transplant patient is like this. It's not just me. Everyone that gets this gift of life, they have this beautiful perspective and nurturing of their soul and giving back to humanity. So it was really amazing. So I had a few complications after the surgery, as one would expect, because of the radiation I had had. So it was a few days after my surgery that I woke up. And this was the most remarkable experience that I've ever had in my life. And this I have never lost hold of, because I learned from cancer never to let go of that incredible feeling you feel when you feel it, and hold on tight for the rest of your life. So I held on to this. So this was cool. So I wake up from anesthesia, and I remember feeling my body warm. And it was warm for the first time in 18 years. Because of the heart failure, you're cold. Like, every part of your body is always chilly feeling, but I was warm. And then I remember my heart beating, like I felt it beating. And my heart was beating against the bed, and I could feel it going against the bed and then back out, and then against the bed and back out. I'm thinking, oh, how am I ever going to sleep again? Like, this is powerful. This is so cool. It was beating so forcibly and like in sync with my essence that my hair was like brushing against the crisp white sheets, and the brushing of my hair was like creating like this harmonious sound. And I remember this feeling, and I have it right now. And it was like every single cell in my body was like oscillating at this like vibrational frequency that was just, it's perfect. And that's how I live. Like, how cool is that? So it has been worth cancer. It's been worth heart failure. It's been worth a transplant. because I get to live like this. And I kind of joke, I wish I could just put me in a little pill and give it to everyone, or sprinkle it like dust and be like, have some of this existence dust. Because, oh my God, my life is so beautiful. It's just amazing. So I just am so grateful.
Wow.
And they give you so many medicines after transplant that a few days went by, and I had this total transition all of a sudden. I became this angry person. I was mad. I was all of a sudden mad that I got an IV drug user's heart. And I was all of a sudden mad that I had a transplant. It was weird. Like, I don't get mad. I'm just not an angry, mad person. There's not a morsel in my body that's ever experienced this before. But you're on this high dose steroids, right? And so I think that was kind of triggering some of this. So I went to bed that night, and I had this dream, or like this sensory experience that was so powerful. And I was in this dwelling place. So when I woke up in this dreamlike state, I'm in this dwelling place. It's this block building. And it was kind of chilly in there too. And there was a window. And I remember waking up in this dream and running to the window to see if my car was there. My car wasn't there. And I turned around. There was a single chair in this building. And to see if my purse was there. My purse wasn't there. And then to the right of the chair was this door. And so I walked towards that door, and outside the door there was these long blades of grass. So I remember kind of crawling out the doorway into the grass and crawling kind of up this hill in the grass. And the grass was like grasping my leg. So you feel those long blades of grass. You know, the grass is kind of sticky and almost cuts your leg. Mm-hmm. That was the feeling in this dream. Like, it was just, my senses were so in tune. The wind was blowing and the air was just very, very crisp. And I remember flipping over after some time and looking at these cumulus clouds in the sky, and these clouds were moving over top of my head. And as I looked out in the distance, there were these families, children, mothers, fathers, these people that were just dancing, playing in the fields. It was this beautiful dream of love and unity of humanity. And then all of a sudden a voice came over me in this dream that said, "Grace." And I woke up at that moment, and I had just complete peace, stillness, and like just this unconditional love for every single thing that existed in my life. It was beautiful. And I knew at that moment that everything was going to be very good moving forward. So I looked at my phone, because I always would listen to instrumental music while I would sleep in the hospital. And the song playing on my phone at that very moment, the name of the song was Grace. So it's like, oh my gosh. So I couldn't fall asleep after that. I'm like, this is way too much. This is like so cool, right? So I opened up my computer after a bit of time to check my email, because I figured I'll just do a little work. I love my work. And I have this email waiting for me that is titled Full of Grace.
Oh, wow. You can't make it up.
You can't make this stuff up, right? So it's just like one sign after another. And I mean, the meaning of grace is really, virtue from God. And I just feel it's just been such a gift. This heart, I named her Grace, as you would imagine, has been such a teacher and such a gift to just really use the gifts we're giving. The meaning in life is to find our gift, and the purpose in life is to use that gift to serve others and to serve humanity. And so that's really my goal and my mission, is just to continue to grow in this gift I've been given, and to be able to just connect and share love for others, because I think that is needed in the world right now. So it's just been truly, truly amazing.
Wow. So now it's 2.5 years, right, since your transplant?
It's interesting. It's been exactly 2 years this Sunday.
2 years, 2 years. Wow.
Yeah, February 5th. So it's been an amazing journey. And, the first year after transplant is tricky. There's a lot of adjustments to medication. So it's a bumpy road. I did have some complications during that time, but I feel there's a distinct difference between my journey post-transplant and many other transplant patients, where I'm very vital. I don't feel sick. I've had bumps in the road that we've had to work through, but I feel my whole food plant-based nutrition is what really sets me apart. And when I was listed for a transplant, I told my colleagues, I'm going to run a marathon 1 year after transplant. They're like, okay, Dawn, you mean a half marathon? I'm like, no, I want to do a full marathon. They're like, Okay, sure. And so after my transplant, when I took those first steps, I mean, I was like two people had to help me stand up, and I had a total walker I had to lean on. I couldn't even walk. I had such atrophy in my muscles that my calf muscles were like indented inward. There was no, I was so profoundly weak for so long. It took me quite a while to get that strength back. And when I say a while, I mean a few weeks, not beyond that. But I worked really hard in the hospital to get my strength back. While in the hospital, I worked really hard with the nutrition team to make sure I can continue that whole food plant-based nutrition. And I did both of those things. And so in the hospital, I just would push it. As soon as I'd wake up, I'd walk. I'd take a break. An hour later, I'd walk again. So I kept on walking in the hospital. Walk, 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 walk. Went on to cardiac rehab and really exercised. I'd go home and exercise. So got well really, really quick. And I realized, hey, let's try to see if I can run a marathon 1 year from transplant and see if this plant-based nutrition can help me get there. And it did. So I ran a full marathon on my 1 year transplant anniversary, and running is kind of a metaphor for my life, right? And I love running. I love that experience. It's just a moment when I can really savor. I feel my heart beat, and I feel like I'm one with grace. And you feel your feet kind of hit the pavement, and that vibration kind of oscillates up your body. And when I do run, I just love sometimes to shut my eyes and just feel the experience as a whole. So it's been really nurturing. Something I loved doing as a child. It's something I couldn't do for 18 years. So I could just keep running all day long if I had time. So it's been really exciting, really, really exciting. But the whole food plant-based nutrition has fundamentally, I feel, been why I have just thrived during this post-transplant time.
I absolutely agree, for many, many reasons. And now you teach, so your work now is lifestyle medicine at the Mayo Clinic, and you support cancer patients, right?
That's exactly right, Chantel. So, when I started that integrative medicine program at Mayo Clinic, it was set on the foundation of lifestyle medicine. But at that time, I actually wasn't board certified in lifestyle medicine. But of course, I had my naturopathic training. At undergrad, I studied nutrition, exercise physiology. So my whole life has been, training and learning to be that sort of a doctor. I didn't have that formal certificate that would board certify me. And I found out about the American College of Lifestyle Medicine when I was listed for heart transplant. So I had some free time. So I became board certified during that time that I was listed for transplant. So it worked out wonderful. And I really feel that board certification, it helped me to be the healthiest version of myself, because though I really knew how to do whole food plant-based nutrition pretty good, it wasn't as much as I needed to tweak it now. And I feel like I've really perfected it, and for my own nutrition, but perfected it in a way that's fun and in a way that just empowers and energizes me, and in a way that I can share that enthusiasm and excitement with my patients. So it's really exciting. And in fact, my patient last night, my last patient for the day yesterday, was a woman that's had complete disease reversal with whole food plant-based nutrition of her lupus. And I rarely see women who are not cancer patients, but she's very high risk of breast cancer, so that's why I saw her. But she's had such success with even reversing autoimmune disease. So, this whole food plant-based nutrition can help so many different ailments. Number one, let's not even try to reverse an ailment. Let's try to prevent ailments from happening in the beginning,
Yeah.
And so we know that it really is the healthiest diet when it comes to prevention of all diseases, especially those chronic diseases. And, we know the Journal of the American Medical Association in June of 2022 said that the number one cause of chronic disease is diet, is nutrition. Yeah. And it's so sad to think that our youth, our kids, 67% of their diet is ultra-processed foods. Yeah. We know that that's directly linked to dying and chronic disease. So we really need to focus on the whole food part of it, number one. I have some people that are like, oh, there's no way I can give up fish. There's no way I can give up eggs. Or there's no way I can give up having a little bit of chicken. I think that's okay. I think we need to meet people where they're at and just slowly try to engage them with increasing the amount of healthy food in their diet. But number one, replacing all processed foods. That's where it has to start. Because I have some other people that I've seen over the years who are vegans, right? But they're vegans who are eating French fries and ketchup.
Yeah.
And that's not going to add to your vital energy, no. So it needs to be that whole food component, food coming from the earth. And I feel like I have such high vital energy. Like my energy is whoop, through the roof, right? And I think a lot of that's my nutrition. And, I especially like to uphold a lot of sprouted foods in my diet and a lot of raw foods. So I think that the nutrition has been just so fundamentally critical for that. And I see that in my patients as well. So about 90% of what I do with my patients is that education with the whole food plant-based nutrition. And I feel so fortunate that Mayo Clinic is supportive of this for their patients, and they do see the importance. So there's a high demand for the visit, and it's just me right now that does the whole food plant-based, nutrition as a physician. We have integrative medical doctors, but I'm really the one that's kind of in this space. But since I've kind of started this practice, you wouldn't believe the interest. There's about 20 other doctors that now want to also and are in the process of becoming board certified. And 43 of our residents are now doing a training curriculum that I started through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. So it's a lifestyle medicine residency curriculum that runs parallel to their training, and they're able to do this training alongside of whatever training it is that they're doing. If it's family medicine, internal medicine, physical medicine, rehabilitation, surgery, whatever training they elect at Mayo Clinic, they can learn this additional treatment modality and strategy to help optimize their patient from whole person health. And so it's really exciting to learn and work with our learners as well.
And so needed. Dr. Clapper does something similar for medical students. He says before they get into pharmacopoeia, pharmacosis, sorry, because, they don't, it's like, let's get to them before the pharmaceutical company goes and says the only way. And it's, I love him. It's just such a great man. And I love that you're doing that, because also, I think it's changing a little bit the image of the Mayo Clinic, because everybody thinks of Mayo Clinic as this very groundbreaking therapies and, very new technologies. But I never heard anybody talk about them as lifestyle medicine. And now, obviously, they are embracing it, and you are like the best spokesperson for it. So I'm happy to hear.
Oh, thank you so much, Chantal. Yeah. We've actually been in this space for over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
It's not in the integrative medicine space, I should say, not necessarily in this whole food plant-based space, but I'm so excited because and I'm so excited to be well, because now I can really embark upon very meaningful research in this area. So my hope, and I just submitted a grant proposal to look at the impact of whole food plant-based nutrition, and I've partnered with this amazing company called Nutrition for Longevity that is actually part of Valter Longo's Prolong company.
Yeah.
And they are making medically tailored nutrition that's whole food, plant-based, no oil for this particular study and for my patients. So we have this, convenient way for when women are undergoing these treatments for these, aggressive cancers. And so the study will be the importance of a whole food, plant-based diet during chemoimmunotherapy and the impact on quality of life, the impact on maintaining weight, but most importantly, the impact on that tumor microenvironment. Can we actually improve the chemoimmunotherapy effect, which you and I both know, I think it's a definite yes, we're going to see that, because we know that the gut microbiome really governs a lot of the immunologic response. And if we have a heightened immunity that's going to go and engage at immunotherapy more, we should see improvement. And so increasing the fiber, increasing the diversity of the plant foods, and eliminating animal products and ultra-processed foods is the key to that, not probiotics.
Yeah.
So it's going to be super exciting to see the results. So I'm really hopeful that we get funded for this study. This is the tricky part, though, and I love Dr. Clapper and all the fathers of lifestyle medicine, Dr. T. Caldwell Campbell, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Ornish. They've really set the path, but now it's time for those of us in lifestyle medicine that are newer in our careers to take everything they've done and continue this forward and do this meaningful, important research and work hard at getting it funded. And the American College for Lifestyle Medicine has been very, very beneficial at really helping us find some of this grant funding that's available. So fingers crossed it gets funded so we can get the study off the ground this year.
Amazing. Yeah, I agree with you. I was thinking the other day, I'm talking to these amazing doctors who had amazing careers, such as Dr. Clapper and Campbell. And And it's great, but they are aging, and they don't necessarily practice medicine anymore per se. They do still do talks, and Dr. Klapper does practice on telemedicine, but the others are not really. They write books, and they are contributing through their knowledge, but they are aging, and I want to see a younger population of doctors and even health coaches. They need to take the next step now, because you can study health coaching like I did. It was brilliant, but for me it was like, this is a great course foundation to learn so much about different doctors out there, and lifestyle medicine. I'd never heard about it before, but you have to carry on your education because there's so much to learn all the time. Nutrition is a very growing science all the time, so you want to understand. You can't go by what you learned in the 60s. Like, you have to know what's going on now, and so we need this young blood coming into the system.
I agree. And how do you operationalize it? It's a fast-paced life, and people want to go through that drive-through line and eat behind the wheel of their car, but it's kind of re-evaluating that. And self-care, like, you have to give time back to yourself. You need to give time back to your family. Spend time in the kitchen, prepare this food. I mean, gosh, there's so many amazing cookbooks out there now. The Be a Plant-Based Woman Warrior is one of my favorite. Plant You, I love. I mean, all these cookbooks, the food is so colorful. The food is so beautiful, and the flavor is so terrific. And that's been really exciting with my patients. I mean, it's cute. I share my cell phone number with many of my patients because I get so excited to get their messages. But one of my dear patients just shared a picture of her refrigerator with me last night. She's like, look at my refrigerator. The plants were like falling out of it. I was like, how do you shut the door? It was so cool. And she just had her recent CAT scan. She has metastatic cancer, and it's showing improvement everywhere. So it's really, really exciting. Again, and she feels good. She just got back from skiing with her family. So here she is, metastatic cancer, on pretty hardcore chemo, doing her whole food plant-based diet, and she's having improved disease, but she's still having quality of life. And, I really think we need to applaud Dean Ornish, because Dean Ornish's approach to care, it's not just the whole food plant-based nutrition. And in fact, if I meet with a woman who I sense that whole food plant-based nutrition is causing a lot of turbulence, I really back off. Like, I really try to get them to get to a place that this is something that's going to add to their overall meaning and empower them and give them autonomy over their disease. But if there's a lot of stress around it, I really want to find out why. And I find that, a lot of times it's because they feel as if they're deviating from their cultural norm. And so I think there's nothing more rewarding than when you take those cultural recipes that meant so much to you and your family, and to try to make those in a healthier way. So that's where I really think it's important to meet with patients one-on-one. I know a lot of institutions have been very fruitful with doing group visits, but I still do all my visits one-on-one, and I love that, because I really get to understand the dynamic of where the patient's at with that nutritional component, and make sure that psychologically they have happiness and pleasure with their food, and it's not a negative. And then also to go deeper and beyond that, we need to look at how much they're moving their body. Movement and exercise, time in nature is so important. We all have stress, but how are we managing our stress? And then that spiritual core and that purpose in life. So it can be a little bit uncomfortable to navigate through that, but I personally feel very comfortable going through my journey to talk about that, and to really make sure that we are embracing the essence of growing ourselves spiritually as well. It's just not about some of these more superficial things with nutrition and exercise. We need to go a lot deeper than that to help that whole person wellness.
I agree.
So it's beautiful.
And Sophia, following in your footsteps, I believe she's now in college.
Yeah, she's in college. It's interesting. So, I do my best, but sometimes when I see on her little charging, it's Chick-fil-A. Oh, I shouldn't say that, but these various restaurants, I'm like, you got a fruit cup, right? Or she's normal. She's eating a normal diet, but she's kind of paying for it a little bit, And I think she's now starting to realize, wait a minute, this past year and a half, I've been away from home. I'm not eating as healthy as I used to. Do I feel as good as I used to? Does my skin look as good as I used to? So I think she's starting to kind of analyze some of this, and she is going into medicine as well. She would like to. And so I always send her various things, but I'm letting her do it on her own accord. She's going to have to learn it on her own. But I really am excited for the time when she finally does realize the importance of it. I don't think she's quite there yet, but I'm letting her just kind of figure it out. You know, I don't want to push this on her. It has to be something that she wants.
Yeah, I think, I mean, she obviously grew up on a plant-based diet at home. So that is important. And I think she has the foundation. But sometimes, you know how you can get rebellious when now you have your freedom and you also want to fit in. Like she's in a new college, in a new space, in a new living environment. So I think for her to be like the healthy plant-based food girl might be, intimidating. But I really think that having the foundations you give her will allow her to come back to it. Because as you said, you feel that you don't feel great. And sure, when you're 20, you can feel great, whatever. But but it will catch up with you. And then you're like, oh, I know what to do now. So having the foundations, I think, is the best thing. Because a lot of the clients I see, the problem is because they don't have the foundations, they find it even more challenging because they grew up with a certain kind of way of eating, and it's very emotional for them not like to eat certain things and not to let go of that. So and they don't really know how to do it right. Like, what does it mean? Like, what do you mean I have to eat more this or more that, or raw salads? What? Like for them, a salad is like a couple of tomatoes with lettuce, and it's like, no, that's a boring salad, and you can do stuff that is much better. So it's a lot of conversation.
It's true. And what's really difficult is she goes to school in Alabama, and there are not many healthy restaurants there. Yeah. And that's been part of what she struggled with. And so it's really, and so it helps me to be a better doctor because I see her struggles. And so I can kind of help to even ask some of those questions for my patients, depending on where they live geographically. I also notice that I have a lot of, the majority of my patients are women, just because breast cancer affects primarily women. And I am a women's health specialist. So majority of my patients are women. I only have a few men in my practice, but when women say, yeah, it's just so hard because my family doesn't want to eat this way, I'm like, oh, we want this to be for the whole family. We want everyone to try to adopt this pattern of eating. So it's learning how to, talk through that, and how can this be whole person wellness for the whole family is so key and important. And women love hearing that. They're like, oh, I didn't think about that. You're right. This is something that would be really important for my kids. And, it's trying to retrain that palate to appreciate those foods. It was so cute. My nephew, cutest little boy in the world, had come to visit me, and his family's on a little bit more of a standard American diet just because that's what they know, right? That's how my cousin was raised. And so when he come to visit me, even my mom was like, Dawn, you may want to get some snacks in for Jack. I'm like, no, we'll do the healthy food. So cute. So I had dates, and I put pecans in the dates, and he put it in his mouth, and I was like, uh-oh, let's see what he's the cutest boy in the world. He goes, It was his response. He loved it. And then I was like, okay, Jack, you got to try this. So I took some frozen cherries and I put a little almond extract in it. He loved that too. So it's really cool. It's just, I think when we kind of approach children in a way that we're excited about it and we make it tasty and something new, they love it. They're open to it. And so it's important to train their palates young. And so he really enjoyed that. So it was super exciting. When my daughter was home for college last time, there's that Crazy Girl super greens. They have like the different chards in there. And when you crunch on them, it's almost like you get a sense of hydration. So her and her sweet friend Reagan were over, and I'm like, hey, you guys taste this. And they're like, okay. So they take a piece, they're like, that's really good. My whole container was gone. They ate the whole thing of greens. I thought it was delicious. I'm like, this is great. I took a picture. So, I think it's just introducing people to these different foods and how wonderful it can be, and the beautiful color. One thing I always share with my patients are those Stokes sweet potatoes, those bright, vibrant purple. And I encourage my patients to take pictures of their food and post it on social media so their friends and family can see how healthy they're eating, and help the friends and family understand why it is that they're getting through their treatment so well. Yeah. And I think it's really a great time, and it's a great time to be a part of this movement because people are interested in this space now. No one wants to be sick. We've never seen such high numbers of chronic disease. Chronic disease that's occurring in young people, right? Yeah. Because we grew up in this fast-paced world. We are the generation of the TV dinner, and we're paying those costs with very poor health as a result, with the rise of chronic disease. So the only way to combat this is to improve how we live.
I agree with you. I have one last question and I'll let you go because I know you have to get to your clients, to your patients. what you got married again, right? You now married again, and is your husband also plant-based?
That's interesting. Not as much as I would like for him to be, but he's transitioned. So for him, it's breakfast. He does 100% plant-based. He's very focused on trying to get his vegetables and fruits at that time. He is from the South. And so again, it's that you can't force this on people. They have to want that change themselves. But I wish, because it is a little bit challenging when you see that those people you care so much about aren't quite as interested in that themselves. But I've learned not to preach. I've learned just to lead by example. And when they want to enhance their vitality and well-being in a way that you see as special and important, then they will do that. But, sometimes when our mortality has been questioned, that's a big wake-up call. And that's a big invitation to, hey, I got to change something. But without that, many times people are not as motivated to change. And so that's where I'm really trying to work through to figure out. And, the majority of my patients are getting that wake-up call. They have cancer. Yeah. They have the internal motivation to want to live to be their healthiest versions of themselves. But when I do have a patient who just comes to me, they hear what I do, and every once in a while I will see a patient that really doesn't have a lot of disease. They just want to live healthier. Or they want to lose weight. They come to me because they want to lose weight, but they're not really sick. Those are the people that just, to me, don't seem as enthusiastic about making some of these changes. Sometimes they want a magic bullet. Yeah. What pill can I take? Or, what shortcut can I take? So that's kind of the space that I'm really working through right now, is how can we help those people? And so it's been a little bit fun that I have some family members, both distant and immediate, that struggle a little bit with the enthusiasm over this whole person wellness. Even though they've seen my triumphant story, you would think that would be enough to change the world, right? But not everyone gets that buy-in. So I'm working on that. And I think that we can't force it on anyone, but those interested, I'm so excited and so proud of you. And not only is it good for our bodies, it's the kind thing to do. Yeah. It's eating animals. It's not the compassionate thing to do. It's not the good thing to do for generations to come. It's not the good thing for our climate. Mm-hmm. So for so many reasons, this way of eating matters. Mm-hmm. But I just love that I'm able to be kind of this beacon of hope that, gosh, if you take care of yourself, amid disease, during these intense treatments, you can attain your vitality. And you can even regain some of that if you don't have it at the time of your diagnosis, if you live healthier. And then I can promise you, 100% promise you, after you're done with treatment, you can flourish. Yeah. And it's easy to do it. It's not hard. And it's so fun. So I love being in this space. I love the journey that my life has taken me on, because I think I'm able to connect with people in a way that they trust me a little bit more, because I've been there, done that sort of a thing. So it's been great.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dawn. I mean, this is such a great story and a true testament of miracles. And I think if people find themselves not having faith, they really need to listen to this, because you can't deny a higher power when you listen to things like this. This is not random. Nothing is in life. But when with a story like this, I see the hands of the creator, like I just do. And I love that you have so much purpose. And as I said at the beginning, throughout adversity, a lot of people get discouraged, but you actually just allowed this to give you even more purpose and doing the things that can help people and yourself in the process. And I find that really inspiring. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chantal. It's just been such a pleasure spending this morning with you. And I know it's late where you're at, so you're probably ready to go to bed.
Oh, no, it's not that late. It's actually, it's what, 1:00 p.m. No, I'm not that late. I'm in Europe. I'm not in Asia. We're good.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, good. For some reason, I was thinking when we had set this time that it was actually going to be quite late your time. So good. I'm happy that this wasn't going towards the later part of your day.
Oh, no. That's what I was saying. This is why it's the earliest one I've done, because normally I do the 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon up to 7 o'clock for the West Coast. So I'm like, this is so early. I love it.
It's so funny. I was going to message you when I woke up and be like, we can start now if you want. So this is wonderful. I'm always up early. So anytime I get to engage with someone with as beautiful of a personality as you and energy as you, I welcome it. So this has been a great morning. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. Thank you so much. And we will definitely speak soon.
All right, Chantal. Thank you.
Bye. Bye, Dawn. Thank you, Dawn, and thank you everyone for staying on for this beautiful episode. I really hope you loved it and you learned so much out of it, because I really feel that there is such a lesson out of this episode, such a lesson out of Dawn's story, and I really hope it inspires you to be the best version of yourself, never to fall victim to any circumstances, but rather shine through adversity. And of course, guys, if you want to reach out, Dr. Dawn, all the links are in the bio, and you can check her story at the podcast. I mean, she's amazing. So, as always, please like, share, and make sure you review our podcast so we can keep on growing. And I shall see you next week. Bye.